My fellow Canadians, today I stand before you joined by hundreds of many Canadian Muslim leaders from across the country. We come here today because today is the 7th anniversary of the Quebec mosque massacre. Just last week, we heard the sentencing arguments for the London terror attacker who took the lives of 3 generations of families in London, Ontario. We remember their names: Khaled Belkacemi, Azzedine Soufiane, Abu Bakr Thabi, Mamadou Tamouberi, Ibrahima Berry, Abdelkrim Hassan, Mohammed Azim Zafis, Talat Afzal, Yumna Afzal, Salman Afzal, Madiha Salman. There's a simple truth that brings us here today, is that Canada has suffered more mass killings motivated by Islamophobia in the past 7 years than any other country in the G7. We come today representing the leadership of our community, doctors, lawyers, progressive supporters, imams, writers, entertainers, entrepreneurs, moms and dads, and everybody in between, because we believe in Canada. We believe in each other, and we believe that our fellow Canadians have always had our back. Canadians have always been consistent in their commitment to a just society. Because that's what being Canadian is all about. Being tough but fair, it's about courage, it's about integrity. We're proud Canadian identities and proud to have deep roots in this country. My own ancestors came to Canada through the Underground Railroad. Fleeing the horrific institution of slavery in the United States, we followed the North Star to come here to find freedom. As Canadians, we continue to stand with integrity, and that's why we've spent the day engaging with members of all parties, and we continue to have a number of important meetings set for this afternoon. However, today, we, representing the vast majority of the Canadian Muslim leadership from coast to coast, have officially canceled our meeting with the Prime Minister. At this moment, we no longer think it's productive to speak with this Prime Minister. As community leaders, we will continue to engage elected officials across the country. This is an unprecedented step for us. We've always engaged with our government and in our democratic process, and always agreed to meet and engage precisely because this Prime Minister came to us with great promise and did deliver on select things that Canadians had asked for, to reverse a dark time of division after 2015. However, that great promise now feels broken and perhaps beyond repair. As we stand here today, our government has consistently noted that it believes in multilateral institutions like the United Nations and the International Criminal Court of Justice. Yet that hasn't stopped Canada from refusing to take any accountability in responding to the provisional measures and ignoring international law by refusing to take seriously any of what the ICJ ordered as provisional measures. Instead, they've compromised the integrity of the international rule-based order and the ICJ by challenging the premise of the case. When our government says that we take international law and the slaughter of thousands of children seriously, we think Canadians will agree. This government doesn't anymore. But it's not only that. As we stand here today, our government has failed to move on substantive hate crime legislation. We stand here today, the government has failed on its promise to institute a victim of hate support fund that would have supported victims like the survivors of the Quebec City mosque massacre. As we stand here today, mosques continue to be targeted across the country in an unprecedented spike of Islamophobia. The words flow effortlessly every time there is a new attack, a new hate crime. Politicians have learned the script. They're shocked, they offer condemnation, they offer their support and say this can't happen again. But it does. It happens again and again, and we hear the same words again. And as much as this inaction has disappointed us in the past, and trust us, even simple asks like performing the security infrastructure program haven't become fulfilled. Over the last 3 months, we've heard our government offer justification and cover for the killing of innocent men, women, and children in Gaza. We've watched as they stood quietly by while journalists were targeted and killed. We've seen members of this government justify the targeting of hospitals and schools where thousands have been taken shelter. We've seen the feminist foreign policy Canada so proudly speaks about becoming silent in the face of women and girls who've been slaughtered by the thousands. We've seen the government that stood strongly in support of the right of Afghan girls to go to school forget that children in Gaza deserve the same right to an education too. There's almost no mosque left in Canada where there is not any congregant who hasn't lost a member of their family in Gaza. The Prime Minister yet has not specifically condemned any attack on any mosque or Muslim person in Canada in the last few months, despite us repeatedly raising those attacks with the Prime Minister's office. A Calgarian, a journalist, a graduate from Queen's University, was apparently kidnapped by the Israeli state agents over the weekend. Our Prime Minister has said nothing to protect the safety of Canadian citizens. of this Canadian citizen. Apparently a Canadian is not a Canadian, is not a Canadian. And that's why we're here today. We don't have much to say to the Prime Minister now. We've met the Prime Minister when he came to Quebec City Mosque in 2017 and said that there would be action. We met the Prime Minister when he came to London in 2021 after the massacre and said that there would be action. We hear from our constituents, representing millions of Canadian Muslims, that it has become clear that what we seem to only get a sliver of policy reform when our lives or our safety is destroyed. Poll after poll has shown that the majority of Canadians want to see action to call for peace in Gaza, and they want to see serious policy action on us standing up for just human rights causes, because this is who we are as a nation that stands up for peace and justice for all people, whether Palestinian or Israeli or any other race or nationality. Yet the Prime Minister appears to simply not be interested in the will of Canadians. This has unfortunately been the progress of years and months of a clear pattern where the Prime Minister has demonstrated that he is no longer interested in listening to the interests of our community. This is a tragic decay in our relationship from a leader that we welcomed into our houses and our hearts as he welcomed refugees and talked about sunnier ways. Members of our community were literally naming their children after the Prime Minister, and yet it has come to this. Because of the decision of the Prime Minister to discard our global reputation as a humanitarian country and a peacemaking nation. As Canadian poet Mark Strand wrote, "We have discarded dreams, preferring the heavy industry of each other. And we have welcomed grief and called the ruin impossible a habit to break. And now here we are." When the leadership of this government refuses to take stances that support the life and liberty of its citizens, the leadership of this government loses the ability to raise the flag of sympathy later when the next Islamophobic attack inevitably occurs. We will continue to meet with our other elected officials and elected representatives today to advocate and engage in good faith. And we are here to remind our leaders that for Canadians, this is not emotion or anger or frustration. This is what we as a democracy do when our family members are killed here or abroad and our government does nothing. We'll always be there to engage in good faith to try to champion the cause of justice. As Canadian Muslims, we believe that this is the right thing to do for the tens of thousands of children of Gaza, for those lost to Islamophobia here in Canada, for all of them. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Nuzhat Jaffrey, and I'm here today from the Canadian Council of Muslim Women. This is a profoundly sad day for all of us as we commemorate the victims and survivors of the Quebec City Mosque massacre. Since that attack, we thought we were making strides in addressing Islamophobia in this country. On October 7th, all that changed. Since then, we are alarmed at the rise of Islamophobic attacks on Muslim women and girls, particularly those who are visible and identifiable by their attire. Women and children are living in fear, and our civil liberties are being violated as we speak for the women and children of Gaza. We are seeing the slaughter of thousands, tens of thousands of women and children. I recall the image of a little boy, Syrian boy, Alan Kurdi, lying on the beach in Turkey during the war in Syria. I remember how it mobilized Canadians and the incoming government to take action, to take decisive action, to bring thousands of Syrian refugees into Canada with pride. And yet, why is it that this government and fellow Canadians, unfortunately, are not moved by the slaughter of a child every 10 to 15 minutes in Gaza? And what about the slaughter of more than 7,500 women bearing their babies in their wombs and being killed? Women who cannot have anesthesia for C-sections. As a women's organization, we are appalled that we are seeing this happen before our very eyes, and yet there is no action with respect to stopping the slaughter, stopping the genocide. So, we wonder how any person of conscience could support the slaughter and how members of any government or political party or leadership can sleep at night. We cannot sleep at night thinking about the women and children of Gaza. How can we observe the slaughter, the maimed bodies, child amputees, and no food, no water, no electricity, incommunicable because they cannot have access to communications? We have many members of our organization who happen to be of Palestinian origin, who have family there. They cannot connect with them. So this is a lived reality for us. We are either 1 or 2 degrees of separation from people we know, families we know, where someone has been killed, either in the occupied West Bank, in the occupied territories, as well as Gaza. This is unacceptable. And the saddest thing about it is that I cannot imagine anyone devaluing human life to this extent. Where is our humanity? What are we thinking? What's happened to us? The sad thing is that Palestinian lives actually do not matter. However, we believe that Palestinian lives also matter. And the dehumanization of those lives has caused us, in this country, some of us, to turn our back on humanity. What we are asking for is that we would really like to see the Government of Canada do all it can to ensure that the provisional measures in the decision of the ICJ that have been recommended must be followed so that the slaughter can stop now. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bonjour. Je m'appelle Mohamed Labidi. Je suis le président du Centre culturel islamique de Québec actuellement. J'étais le vice-président du Centre culturel islamique de Québec et de la Grande Mosquée de Québec lors de la tragédie. Et je suis devenu président quelques mois après. Et j'ai vécu la tragédie du jour J jusqu'à maintenant. Collectivement, chaque année, nous prenons un moment pour réfléchir, non seulement sur les événements de ce jour-là, mais aussi sur la question plus générale de l'islamophobie. Le 29 janvier 2017 a été une journée horrifiante, très dure pour notre communauté. Mais les faits dont on parle trop peu ont eu lieu les semaines et les mois qui l'ont précédé. Et même qui l'ont suivi parce que l'islamophobie a continué malgré qu'il y avait 6 victimes et autant de blessés et plusieurs rescapés. Les fidèles de la mosquée nous ont rapporté des paroles dégoûtantes, du vandalisme et des comportements violents dirigés contre notre communauté. Cependant, la plus grande menace qui est régnée demeurait l'atmosphère d'impunité. Des personnes haineuses se sentaient libres de nous attaquer. Nos vies étaient considérées comme bon marché et sans importance. Ce qui me met en colère aujourd'hui, c'est que nous vivons à nouveau dans cette atmosphère et dans cet environnement. Et ce sont nos dirigeants qui ont permis à cette atmosphère de se rétablir actuellement. Le déclenchement de la guerre au Moyen-Orient le 7 octobre a profondément affecté notre communauté. Nous avons entendu des déclarations problématiques les unes après les autres, provenant de divers échelons du gouvernement. Une fois de plus, comme pendant la période avant ce jour fatidique, nos vies semblent bon marché, alors que nous regardons des milliers de Palestiniens se font massacrer et que l'islamophobie nous menace à ce jour ici au Canada. Aujourd'hui, je veux m'adresser directement à la communauté politique canadienne, Mesdames, Messieurs, vos paroles ont des conséquences. Le Premier ministre du Québec, il l'a dit, les mots peuvent tuer. Appeler à un cessez-le-feu permanent à Gaza et poser des actions concrètes en termes de lutte contre l'islamophobie pour que la tragédie du 29 janvier 2017 ne se reproduise plus. Agissez avec la justice et appelez à la paix, s'il vous plaît. Agissez maintenant. Merci beaucoup.